What's the most important thing that AI could help us with? What's its greatest potential in the coming years or decades? This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. My background is I'm a Stanford-trained medical doctor, and I've been doing AI since 2019. So I was trained in AI, data science, statistics at Stanford, went alongside with my medical degree. I've worked as a head of AI for several different companies, as well as business strategy and really aligning tech with business, usually in a health setting. So I've been thinking about this question about what is the highest impact that AI could possibly offer, right? A lot of doomsayers, a lot of legitimate reasons to be concerned about it, right? We see that if you look at products, if you look at apps like Instagram and some of these more, we call them addictive, but like the systems that will tap into your dopamine centers and get you to just click and scroll. Those are optimized, those are high-tech things that are optimized to infiltrate into a human being's dopamine system and not let go. Hold on as long as possible. That's really what they're optimized for. And it's not really Facebook or Meta or whoever's fault. It's that's what the game is. That's the game that we're playing. And so it's don't hate the player, hate the game. I mean, these are the games that we're playing. So when I think about AI and all of the dangers involved with it and the direction that a lot of us are going, I try to think about how AI can augment human beings, right? There's a quote that I've heard, and I say it ad nauseum now, but it is humanity's problem is that we have Paleolithic emotions, we have medieval institutions, and we have godlike technology. And so if you have a naked primal ape, essentially, who has his finger on the button of the nuclear codes or godlike power, godlike technology, that's a problem. That's why we are stuck in a place where we're building these things that hack into dopamine. Now, where could we direct it in a way that doesn't hack into dopamine? Can we use it in a way that elevates those Paleolithic emotions? And I'm here in Dubai now. I just moved here, and it's been less than a week. But coming here, I'm curious about what projects are available. There's a lot of money here. There's a lot of very forward-thinking people. There's freedom to innovate, to ask questions, to move quickly. And there's an investment in the future, of a better future. And there are visionaries here that are willing to place their time, their energy, and their money into initiatives that are going to have a very long-term and positive impact. So I've been, in my very short time here, I've already been speaking with people who are eager to either work with me or to share what they're working with me. And AI is across the board. It's in everything. It's on everybody's conversations. Not here, but around the world, but especially in places that are high innovative centers like here. Now, something I've noticed is that there's a lot of talk around health and AI. And when I say health, I don't mean mental health. So we have this big umbrella of health, and within health or medicine, health's the bigger umbrella. Within health, we have medicine, which is urology, gynecology, rheumatology. All of the ologies are in that bucket, and then you've got things that are like sort of like your wearables and your optimization and your supplements and things like that. And then like way over here is this other kind of weird, strange creature that we call mental health or psychology, psychiatry, whatever. But the basis is that there's this kind of thing, the mind, that we're not really sure what's going on with it. We know it's a big deal. We know that it's causing lots of problems when things go wrong. And the thing that I'm really interested about is that we can see what happens when things go right. Now, this is a kind of a taboo thing to talk about, when things go right. Now, what do I mean when things go right? Okay, so you can define what right means or what success means for yourself, but let's just take something that is, it's something that a lot of people would agree on, which would be something like monetary success. Okay, so say you want to make a lot of money. There's all sorts of unethical ways that you could go about it, but there's all sorts of traits that are needed, whether you do it in an ethical or an unethical way. There's all sorts of traits and mindsets. You can't have like a bumbling buffoon with all sorts of, crap in their mind, make it to be a billionaire. You just can't, no matter how ethical that person might be or want to be, right? So if we're thinking about our mind as a vehicle and the place where we are in our lives as like a literal place, we're gonna create a metaphor here But my mind's a vehicle. I am where I am. What got me to this place is up here, predominantly, right? Now, why I say this is controversial is there's a proclivity these days, less so, thankfully, but there's a proclivity to go, I am where I'm at because of my circumstances. And that's not wrong, right? Like some of the biggest data points that will predict where you are right now and why you're there is where did you grow up or where were you born? How old are you? Things that are kind of out of your control. So there is something to be said there, but there's a danger. There's a danger in looking at that and ascribing too much influence to it. Because at the end of the day, this is the controversial part, and it shouldn't be, but it is. The controversial part is that the nature-nurture argument, we look at nature and we go, right, there's all these things that are out of my control, my height, my weight, my skin color, my looks, my IQ to some extent, like that's all kind of out of my control, where I was born, how I grew up, all that stuff. Therefore, and that's the dangerous part, therefore, I'm helpless. Therefore, I have this card, this hand that I'm dealt, and that's it. Oops. And that's really the danger, because it's not like this static picture of, well, some of it is nature and some of it's nurture. It's like, no, maybe right now. But you know what the biggest determinant of that is, of that balance? It's you. It's me. We determine that. So if you, just by virtue of the fact that you've decided that nature has this massive overriding influence, there's nothing I can do, you've made it so. You have made it so. If that's the way that you want it to be, then it's so. Now, I'm not saying you can ever get to a point where you're like, nature doesn't matter at all, because it does, right? Like we're all dealt some hands that if it's not impossible to change it long term, you know, with some amazing advanced technology that can make you grow and change yourself however you want, it's not possible today, right now in this moment. So there are some limitations. So, but the hopeful part, and the part that shouldn't be controversial, is that the more that you look at the autonomy within you, the programs that you're running, and the more consciously that you can see yourself, know thyself, and change what's the programming that you're running, the more control that you can have, and the more autonomy that you have in carving the direction that you want to go. So back to that thing we were talking about with the optimal, let's say, software. I call it mindware, but the optimal software that your mind is running. For sake of argument, we can say that that's becoming a billionaire, but it could just as easily be having the best relationship in the world with your significant other, with your kids, becoming the best that you can be, however you define that. That's a bit of a creative process to figure that out. But there are certain things that you need to understand. Now, I've come to learn this very much the hard way. I've come to, I was born in the Mormon church, and not just like your neighborhood Mormon of like, yeah, I know a Mormon, or I work with a Mormon. This was so Mormon that the other Mormon kids would look at us and go, thank goodness I'm not in that family over there, right? They're not that crazy. So, very, very Mormon, and like brainwashing was kind of a thing. And there were certain things that I grew up with that just weren't really allowed, or were frowned upon, seriously frowned upon, like asking real questions that cut to the heart of certain matters, like having doubt, asking uncomfortable questions. Those were all ex-nayed, like you can't do that. Where's your faith? That sort of thing. So I got to see that there's this ideology that kind of sits on top of us, so to speak, and it was guiding my decisions. It influenced what I chose to spend my time doing. It influenced me going and living in Russia for a couple of years, and now that I've popped out of that, or I've said get out of my mind ideology. Now I look around and I go, oh, there's all sorts of flavors of ideology out there, or maybe memes would be another way to describe it. But there are these ideas, these frameworks and patterns that are kind of rigid, and we're not even aware most of the time that we're running them. We're not even aware that there are all of these programs that we've inherited or that have been passed down to us, and we are running them believing wholeheartedly, like hook, line, and sinker, believing that this is reality. And it's not. They're things that we've been given and we don't even think to question them. Usually because they were given to us so long ago and they're so cemented into our understanding of our world that we don't even think about it. We take it as a given. And that makes it really, really hard to move on. And that's part of the reason why, there was a great conversation that I saw the other day that Elon Musk, he was being interviewed and he was asked something about longevity. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could get to a point where humans didn't die or they lived for hundreds of years or something to that effect? And his response after some thinking, he said, no, I don't think that would be good. And I don't remember his exact words, but he said essentially that we progress as a species more when people who have old ways of thinking die. Like, it's not that people necessarily change their minds in the course of their lives, unfortunately. It'd be great if it were so, but it's not. And so what tends to happen is we progress by funerals. You have leading people who are, paradigms of whatever field they're in, be it medicine or tech or government, whatever it is, and they don't actually change their minds. And so a lot of times humanity has to wait until they die before new people can come in with new ideas, and then the cycle continues. Well, that's very slow. That's very slow, and at the pace that we're going with technology, I don't see a tenable way that we catch up. I think that gap between our technological advancements and our, let's say our progress within our own minds, our own evolution, psych evolution, it's not moving as quickly, right? So that divide is getting greater and greater, and I see a lot of trouble down the road. So my main goal is to find a way to use that technology to supercharge and accelerate the development within our own minds. Okay, so to make this more concrete, a bit more concrete, when you talk about therapy is kind of a weird thing if you think about it. What's going on? Well, I've got something in my mind, some kind of representation of myself, the world, others, that isn't right. It's not serving me. Usually some kind of a false belief, right? And I've internalized that. I'm not really aware of it. So what I do is I go knock on a therapist's door and I say, hey, can you help me out? I've got this thing, and can you help me to diagnose this, figure it out, and solve it? And they're asking me questions, right? But when they're asking questions, what they're really doing is they're saying, hey, in your mind, I'm going to make a request. Can you go and retrieve that thing? Can you tell me about, all of these things back here so that I have an understanding of what's going on in your mind? And so, I'll talk, or if you're the patient, you'll talk. And what we're doing is we're trying to convey, as best we can, a representation of our reality, right? And then the therapist is hearing that and having a sort of I'd say visualization, but an understanding of what that representation of reality is. And then trying to determine, right, where's the problem? Where are the logical fallacies here? And then mirroring back to us. Right? It's a very delicate process, because if you've ever been told outright, you're wrong and this is why, what's the automatic reaction as humans? No, I'm not, right? You're defensive, you get kind of emotional, and you clamp down. So really what's going on, you can use an analogy with surgery, right? It's like, try doing surgery without any anesthesia. What's the person gonna do? Go away, right? Pain, as soon as the scalpel touches them, it's like, fuck off. I don't want any of this. And it's natural, it's very natural. And so what do? We need to have some kind of an anesthetic. Calms down, and then the surgeon can do her work, and then she does her thing, and then patches up, and we're good. So we don't really have, well, we do, but let's say in accepted legal practices, we don't have a way to anesthetize the mind and be so open so as to go for the therapist to just point out and go, dude, this is what's going on with you. I can see it right now. We've had 1 or 2 sessions. It's already obvious to me. Let's really get to the heart of the issue. Instead, what ends up having to happen is they kind of mirror back, and they might ask questions and prompt you to look at that thing again without actually outright saying it. And the idea is that, hey, if I can get you as a patient to come to that realization on your own, and you find that problem within yourself, you're much more likely to accept it, right? And it might take a long time. It might take months, it might take years for you to finally kind of get comfortable enough to look at that big scary thing that you haven't looked at. And so that's kind of the hope. And then there's some tools that can be used to correct that, to maybe undo a bond between two things, a belief, I am unworthy, right? And to undo that bond, there are things to be done to undo that bond, and then to reforge a bond with something else that's more healthy, right? So the long and the short of it is you have this kind of funny, primitive, it's quite primitive, right? Like psychological surgery, let's say. And we already know that AI can, well, the way that they're built right now, it is primitive. They don't have any of the hierarchical representations that we do in our minds. Nevertheless, there's promise there that they can actually be the ones to start to help us to see where those problems are. And not only see where the problem is, right? See, this is the thing that I think most people are not quite seeing clearly when it comes to this mental health. I like to say mental wealth, because mental illness is a real problem and it affects lots of people. Suicide is the #1 killer for men in many age brackets. It's a really big problem, and there are a lot of good people that are handling that. I think another approach, not a worse or better approach, is to look at not why things are bad, but why things are good. And it doesn't happen that often, but sometimes it does. Sometimes things work out tremendously for people. And if you've ever met someone, and it is rare, like even if you're in successful circles, it's rare, but it's also kind of unmistakable. Let me know if you've ever had an encounter with somebody where within even the first few minutes of talking to that person, you're like, there's something about this person's giving off a kind of a very warm energy, or like a peaceful vibe, or like they've got it together, or nothing could perturb them, something to that effect. It's hard to put into words, but I know I felt it, not many times. I could probably count on one or both hands, but those people do exist. And it's usually people that have done a lot of self-work, and they've gone through a lot. So I'm interested in what makes humans work well. What does that model look like? Instead of fixing all these crappy cars over here who have all these problems, like tons of problems, why not figure out how a Lamborghini works? What if we had a really good understanding of how a Maserati and a Lamborghini mind, like what does that look like? And once we have that, and if we can show AI what that looks like, then maybe we can start to reverse engineer this process, because I don't think it's enough to just have an idea of what not depressed looks like, or like not anxious. I just don't, I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes from in mental health, is like, I don't have problems. I don't want to admit that I have all these problems and that I'm weak. And that a lot of times the goal of therapy is to not be broken, quote unquote. And of course there's a lot of stigma involved. Like what's more personal and intimate than your mind? And to admit to somebody else and being like, the closest representation of who I am as a person is broken. Whew, that's tough. Especially if you're outside of an intimate group, like if you're talking in business or professional setting, that is a very, very difficult thing to do. Stigmas are going down, thankfully, but my intuition is that I think going about it from a mental wealth, there's nothing shameful about saying, I want to be the best that I can be. I want to achieve my potential. These are my goals in life, and I want to achieve them. And if we start with that, I think that we can work our way back. If we can start with what works really well, then we have a better idea on how to guide ourselves to bring the most unfortunate of us back to functioning shape and then excelling shape.